Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's ILTA webinar, Citrix's latest application cloud and securities tools. I'm Nicole, and I'll be serving as your moderator. Cornerstone.IT for sponsoring today's webinar. Today's presentation will run about 45 to 60 minutes, and we ask that you submit any questions you have into the Q&A box. If they are not addressed during the presentation, we will address them at the end. Before we start, please know that we're also recording today's webinar, and we'll post a link to our website under recording shortly after today's presentation. Also, towards the end, we ask that you take a few moments to complete the evaluation polling that you will see appear on your screen. I will now turn the webinar over to Jim for introductions.
Thank you, Nicole. Hi, this is Jim Morio, one of the principals of Cornerstone.IT. We're a longtime ILTA partner as well as longtime Citrix partner. Today we have speaking Jay Irvine from Login VSI and Andrew Schmidt from Citrix. Also, we have standing by for our technical support for any questions that we need some advanced technical expertise. We also have Vidit Desai and Sunny Suhail. This is part of an ILTA roadshow that we've been doing East Coast and West Coast. So there's some other folks up there that have presented at some of the other cities. We are also presenting on site in Pittsburgh on December 4th. In Washington, D.C. on December 6th, and in Philadelphia on December 7th. So if you have any peers that would be interested in attending any of those ILTA roadshows, Pittsburgh, December 4th, D.C., December 6th, and Philly, December 7th, they could register at the online, at the ILTA roadshow website. I will be monitoring the question and answers. So I'll, if there's any questions that come up while Jay or Andrew are speaking, I'll be happy to read them off to them. If I think that that question is going to be covered later, I'll say I'll wait until we get to that point, or we may end up saving some for the end. So with that, well, just real quick on the agenda, we've included Login VSI because they are a third-party tool that works very well with Citrix VDI environments, and most successful environments use their tool. I'll let Jay talk to that. Andrew's going to talk a bit about Citrix's Cloud, becoming a more popular offering from Citrix, as well as some of their tools around application layering, environment management, and security and analytics. So with that, I will hand that over to Jay.
Great, thanks, Jim. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on where you may be located. My name is Jay Irvine, as Jim mentioned, and we're with Login VSI, and our solutions are all focused around end-user experience within a VDI environment. We use synthetic users running synthetic transactions, and I'll get into that here in just a minute, to do right-sizing, scaling, proactive performance monitoring, and change management for your Citrix VDI environment. This is all achieved using the virtual user, which I'll touch on here on the next slide. Virtual user, for our purposes, is, for lack of a better term, a robot user that we have driving those synthetic transactions against your VDI environment while capturing critical performance and scalability data from within the environment in an active way. These virtual users are capable of replicating effectively anything that your regular users could do with a mouse and a keyboard. Our virtual users can replicate that activity. So we can get a very organic view of what your actual production workloads look like without having to inconvenience any of your users, which in the legal space can be a bit of a challenge, I'm sure you guys all know. If you haven't run into the virtual user previously, or if you haven't run into Login VSI previously, you probably have heard of us through our numerous different reference architectures, white papers, used throughout the major VDI vendors such as Citrix, VMware, Azure, Amazon. Across the board, we are used, I think, by 96% of the major VDI vendors to validate their own internal architectures. So it becomes a valuable tool to use that same technology within your own VDI stack to understand that you are providing the correct amount of resources, an acceptable level of performance, and being proactive how you monitor that within your VDI environment. We can go to the next slide, Jim, or Andrew. We have 3 separate solutions within our virtual user suite. Those are, first, to start off with Login VSI, which is our kind of flagship product, which you've probably seen out in the field before. This allows us to use a large number of those virtual users in mass to test sizing, scalability, and overall functionality of a VDI environment. Effectively, an army of virtual users we throw at your VDI environment in a pre-production scenario in order to test and validate that you're going to be able to support the number of users you need to, and they're going to have the experience that they expect. That tool can also be used for things like change management. If you're dealing with situations such as Windows 10 migrations or some of the vulnerabilities like L1TFs, pieces like that, the ability to test your environment prior to making any major change, validating that in a change management scenario before you kick that out into production, and also can be used for things like VDI optimization, DR testing. We also have login PI, which is that same concept of a virtual user running a synthetic workload against the environment. But in this case, it's used for proactive user monitoring, ongoing performance testing, as well as some very detailed application performance testing and remote protocol latency capture. This can be used to deploy these virtual users instead of doing them in a specific test scenario. These users are going to run 24/7 within your environment, typically located from your remote offices, actually replicating that connection as if they were a real production end user and proactively alerting you in case there's any issues with availability, application performance, or just general slowness within the environment. And last but not least is Login.IT. Login.IT is a new product we recently launched, which helps to validate application compatibility on new builds of Windows 10, moving applications from a traditional desktop environment to a VDI environment, things like that. It can give you a powerful tool to quickly validate those on the fly. And we can move on, Andrew. A good use case, which should be topical for everybody on the call here today, is one of our large clients, a large nationwide law firm, using our product suite extensively at a number of phases throughout their VDI deployment. First and foremost, they're using our Login VSI product to validate and optimize their environment. Because we have the ability to launch a large number of users and generate a comprehensive data set relative to end user experience and scalability, we were able to create a baseline, make some changes to the environment, and optimize to ensure that they are getting the most bang for their buck given the configuration and the workloads that they're trying to run. In addition, they're also using the product to validate a purchase or a move towards NVIDIA Grid GPU cards, trying to understand the impact that's going to have on their overall user experience, how much additional CPU will they gain by moving to that piece, and does it actually impact the users in a way that's going to validate the cost. In addition, they're also using our Login PI product real-time 24/7 in, I believe it's 17 of their remote offices. Those virtual users are replicating activity all day, every day, and capturing and again ensuring that users from all of their remote offices can access their applications. They are testing to ensure their document management system is functioning as expected, with some detailed transactions relative to specific functions that are going to be critical to their productivity, as well as alerting to any network latency issues that they may experience from one office or another. And really the results here have been very successful. The idea is they have the opportunity now to ensure they have a right size and optimized environment. They have improved data on budget decisions. Their user experience quotient has gone up somewhere in the range of 6 to 7% on their last survey, and their overall VDI performance and adoption has increased to a really large degree. And we can replicate that type of scenario across any situation. Our virtual users have the capability of doing not only standard out-of-the-box workloads, things like Windows applications, Microsoft Office Suite, but can be tailored to represent your applications, your images, to work with your infrastructure, so we can provide that same type of assurance relative to scalability of your environment, performance, and overall user experience success. And we can move on to the next slide, Andrew.
Jay,
go ahead, Andrew.
I think you kind of answered somebody's question. So if a firm wanted to create their own environment in Login VSI to spin up these virtual machines to make sure that they're using their PDF maker and their document management, can that be done with Login VSI?
Absolutely. So we can customize these, as I mentioned, to any application. We can replicate any transaction within that application and wrap specific custom timers around each one of those transactions so we can track them at a granular level to ensure those small pieces of application interactions are performing within the threshold of time we expect. We can either do that 24/7 or to understand how those transactions are impacted by large user load with login BSI. So we can really understand not just how long does it take for these pieces to start, but also those critical transactions within applications, how they perform with additional user load, how they perform from different remote offices, things like that. Yep, absolutely. Great question.
Okay. One other question, and I think you also answered it, but I'll ask it again. Can you test after a upgrade like Microsoft Office? So I guess it's kind of a
absolutely
before and after.
Yeah, absolutely. And the before and after is the perfect way to think about it. We have the ability to essentially baseline the environment before you make a major change within the environment. Baseline that, then we can implement that change in a pre-production standpoint, run that test again, validate it so we can ensure that any changes we made aren't going to have a major impact on user experience, sizing, scalability of the environment. And of course, if they do, that gives you that early warning system where you can pull back that update before it's going to impact your users to troubleshoot beforehand. So it's really a tool that allows you to know before you go and change management and when building new environments, changing applications, things like that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Perfect. And this is usually where I'll ask for questions, so we'll go ahead and hold those to the end. But yeah, we're Login BSI, and we are focused on end user experience, testing and change management within the Citrix space, and we've had a lot of success in the legal vertical, and would love to speak with anybody if you have any questions at the end. Thanks very much. And we'll hand it over to you.
Sorry, Jay, one more question. Does your Login PI tool work with other monitoring tools?
It does. Great question. So it actually is a fully RESTful solution. So we can make API calls directly to the database and pull any of this information from Login PI directly into an existing tool, be that Splunk or Lakeside or SolarWinds or any of those kind of things. We can pull that information directly in. So not only will you get the benefits of your traditional monitoring solution that's looking at each individual user, but we also have the proactive component with our virtual users that allows you to ideally catch those issues before they impact your end users. So you can, again, provide a better user experience and just be more proactive in supporting your end user base.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hand it over to Andrew.
All right. Thanks. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about kind of what we introduced in the agenda in terms of what we're going to talk about with Citrix, but I really want to kind of frame it around this idea of the future of work. If you've seen Citrix messaging, seen Citrix presentations, something we've been talking about for a long time, and we're really at the point now where we can say that the future is now. Okay, so a lot of the things that we've been talking about, we have successfully been delivering, and in many cases, the workplace is very right for these different kinds of solutions. One of the biggest things that we're seeing is the amount of mobile users, whether this is officially field people, whether this is people who are just working outside of the office occasionally, or just the fact that less and less people have traditional offices or seats in offices. When we look at employee behaviors, not only do we see people working outside of the office, they're working in multiple locations on any given day. Okay, whether we talk about that from the standpoint of, what you do first thing in the morning, you stop by the office, you go out to a client site, you stop into a Starbucks to do a conference call or something, that we see people working everywhere. One of the drivers or another factor we've got to look at is the change in the workforce, okay? Because I can't see my audience here, I'm not going to make too many cracks about millennials. But another way to look at it is, honestly, we have about 5 generations of workers in the workforce right now. And in some ways, the distribution of openness to change is not what you expect. right? We expect that millennials are going to be the fastest to pick up newest technologies, but the interesting part is the next biggest group is actually in many cases the more mature workers. Okay, so the 50 pluses, okay, or possibly even in older groups, who have started to recognize that, hey, there are better ways to do this. So, this is not something specific to one group, but a lot of the changes in how we work are in fact being changed by the changes of the workforce. And really what has happened is the IT model has dramatically changed. All right, if we look at classic IT, we lived in a world of on-premises apps and datas. We typically had PCs sitting in an office somewhere. We had maybe one physical location or a couple of locations, and it worked the same way. But this is the environment we're dealing with now, okay? We may have things hosted on cloud, or at a bare minimum, we are using software as a service, we're using mobile apps, and the devices and the locations where people are working is dramatically different, okay? And so even if we don't look at this from a change in the workforce, we have to look at it as a change in work styles. And this is driving a lot of things. The data is moving to the cloud. A lot of applications are moving to software as a service or mobile apps. We're going from, even for, quote, in-office people, typically we're ending up with laptops now because we know at some point they're not going to be in the office and they need that flexibility. We tend to have less and less dedicated 100% office workers. And all of that data and application traffic used to live mostly on a wired network. All right, so even if we do have on-premise, a lot of that now is going to be wireless, and we need to look at how things behave differently when we're on different kinds of networks. And we're going to see additional changes as the workforce evolves and as we're driven to cloud-based solutions. So the Citrix approach to this is what we talk about as the secure digital workspace, right? Because if people are working differently, in many ways, we need to consider our IT security model differently as well, all right? If we think about old style, okay, everything was in the office. That was really what we operated in what we call the castle security model. The goal of IT security was to keep the bad people out and keep the good stuff in. But where are the walls when we're using, we've got mobile workers, when we're using software as a service, when we're using cloud-based apps, when we're putting things in our own cloud instances? Okay, how do we evolve both the security model as well as provide the user experience that drives compliance? Okay, and that's one of the things that a lot of times we don't think about. But the vast majority of shadow IT, the vast majority of people working around security policies, et cetera, is usually driven by their honest attempt to do their job, okay? So if they feel there's a better way to do something, especially with the younger generations, we'll be nice and put it that way, they're much more open to finding a way, finding something other than what IT is currently providing. And so what we need to do is we need to address that. And from the Citrix side, we really look at this as an opportunity for your organization's IT to become the preferred provider. So the best option, the best solution, the best way to work is what you're providing versus somebody saying, hey, I can do better, I'm going to go find something else. And part of the way we're doing that is with our migration to a cloud. So a lot of the way Citrix is doing things and what we're offering as our services, because we can't necessarily call them just products anymore. And really what we're trying to drive is, with the idea of Citrix Cloud, is really provide that consistent experience, single sign-on, a unified console. So however that user is accessing their resources, they get the same experience. All right, everything that they need is brought together, so all of the services they need are available, okay, are brought to them. And everything is going to be come up to date, all right? And we don't have to worry about making sure people apply patches, et cetera, et cetera. It's all maintained as part of the Citrix Cloud services. So what about the rest of it? And this is really one of the big differentiators that we look at from Citrix is we give you an amazing amount of flexibility. All right, so wherever you are on that potential cloud journey, we can accommodate you with the same services. And that gives you a lot of flexibility, and that gives you a lot of integration as well. So if you are at a point where you're ready to put stuff into a public cloud, or you want to stay with things either on traditional local hypervisors or a private cloud solution, or somewhere in between, so some hybrid solution, we can deliver consistent unified experiences across all of this. So if you have certain applications you choose to keep running on premises, you find some optimizations for putting this on Azure, you find something else that you get better performance out of if you put it in AWS, and then maybe you've got some performance critical things that you want to run at multiple locations, we can bring that all together as a single experience through Citrix Cloud. So again, talking about choice, pick your hypervisor. The Citrix hypervisor, Microsoft Hyper-V, VMware, as well as Nutanix. Okay, so talking about hyper-converged, there are a lot of times workloads that you want to keep close to the user. The comment about GPU is a great example. I actually do a lot with GPU at the high end, so CAD/CAM users, people doing design work. They can't deal with the kind of latencies that you might have even to a metro local data center. Okay, so the fact that I can drop in something like a Nutanix hyper-converged solution or something running VMware at that work location provide extremely high performance, as well as offset a lot of that bandwidth is a huge opportunity for certain use cases. And again, if the rest of my applications are better handled somewhere else, it doesn't matter. I'm not tied to having everything only delivered one way. So I do want to focus a little bit on where Citrix and Microsoft fit together. And one big piece of that is going to be around Azure. Okay, so Citrix has been involved with Microsoft since forever. In fact, if we go back, a lot of the what we think of as Microsoft technologies, specifically remote desktop protocol, originally came from Citrix. Okay, so they have been joined at the hip for quite some time, and that integration is just going to keep going forward. So if you're using traditional Citrix on premises and you need some additional capacity, maybe it's seasonal workers, maybe it's a project for a specific customer that you want to keep isolated for whatever reasons, all right? It would be very easy to extend your current environment out to Azure. If you want to get out of the data center business, whether that's local data center or colo, you can forklift everything to Azure, okay, and run everything there 100%. But the better option in most cases is the Citrix Cloud service, where instead of you needing to maintain that Citrix infrastructure as part of your Azure instance, you're using the Citrix Cloud service for that management plane. And then all that's running in your Azure instance is your actual worker servers, okay, and the data that needs to go along with those. There are a couple of servers that provide connectivity back to Citrix Cloud, but it is significantly less of a requirement in the amount of Azure compute than you would need if you fully hosted a Citrix environment in Azure.
Andrew, I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can I move my Citrix infrastructure to Azure or Citrix Cloud without changing my virtual desktop on-prem?
The answer would be there's a couple of ways to address that. If you are looking to continue running your workloads, okay, so your desktops and your applications, you could move to Citrix Cloud tomorrow, okay? Obviously, you've got current licensing, and there'd be a trade up because the cloud service is subscription-based. If you're talking about moving those workloads up to Azure, then you could either use, stay with your traditional licensing and host that control infrastructure alongside your workloads in Azure, or you could, as part of that, move to the Citrix Cloud service. What's going to be most economical is a conversation that you want to have with the Cornerstone folks, because it really comes down to seat numbers and types of workloads and the kind of data that you've got. But if you're looking to transition, as in this is not going to be, turn it off on Friday and turn it on somewhere else Monday, which of course never happens anyway, the cloud service is a good way to look at, because I'll be brutally honest. If you're going to run workloads in multiple locations, whether that's because of where those workloads are most efficiently run, or you're looking at high availability or DR scenarios, there is no simpler way to do it than with Citrix Cloud. It is so much so that if I've got people with those kind of use cases, that's the first recommendation I do is look at that cloud service. Okay.
And I think the follow-up question I probably can answer it. It says, how do I change my Citrix licenses to cloud licenses? So Citrix has some SKUs that could convert your on-prem to cloud, or you could simply wait for your or let your on-prem licenses expire and then purchase the cloud. So either way, you could change that. But if you need any specific questions, feel free to contact Cornerstone.
Yep, and that's the right approach too, because there are some specifics around the licensing. There are and will continue to be promotions from Citrix if you're going to do trade up to transition to Citrix Cloud. And just looking at what's going to be the best option is part of that design, okay? And that's one of the things you're going to take into account when you start looking at that. Now, actually kind of moving on with this, well, what happens if I get stuff into the cloud? And the answer is, well, it depends on how good your connection to the cloud is. The same way we have to think about it with any other off-site solution. So one of the interesting things that we've got kind of uniquely when we talk about Azure as that hosting platform is that Microsoft has recently released what they call Azure Virtual WAN. Okay, Azure Virtual WAN is generically a SD-WAN or software-defined WAN solution. The interesting thing is when we talk about SD-WAN, it is point-to-point. Okay, so I've got to have something at each end that understands what we're doing to optimize that connection and provide high availability over multiple paths. The Azure Virtual WAN service is half of that. Well, where do you get the other half? Well, guess what? Citrix is one of 2 vendors that can provide that other half of that solution. All right, so Citrix has a mature SD-WAN product. So if you're doing traditional data center or you're looking at putting workloads to somewhere other than Azure, absolutely, we have network optimization solutions that provide better performance and higher availability on those connections. But again, with Azure, we have this kind of unique halfway solution where, well, I can get part of it managed by Microsoft on the Azure side, so it just becomes part of my network cost for that instance, all right? And then the other half of it I maintain at either my main office or maybe at my branch offices. Okay, so where this gets very valuable is when I've got situations where, well, the only way I get the level of performance out to Azure would be if I buy a express route, so a dedicated connection from that office up to Azure. The virtual WAN plus SD-WAN solution provides an alternative to doing that. Okay, and those connections don't look like much, but then you realize that, well, you have to pay Microsoft, then you got to pay your service provider, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so it's definitely something to look at, especially if you need higher levels of performance or availability for locations that are currently underserved. Now, one of the other benefits we get out of Citrix Cloud is it becomes not just for the user a unified workspace, okay, from where they can get all the applications and desktops and software as a service that they need, but we also get some great benefits on the management side. Okay, so now all of the resources I have available on the management side are in one place as well. Okay, so yes, I still need to get to different specific consoles for certain things, okay, but the how I get to them is no longer, okay, I got to go to this machine for that machine to this. I go out to my Citrix Cloud control pane, and I have all the services that I've subscribed to, and it's very easy to add additional ones and go in and manage what I need. Now, one of those that is a relatively new release into Citrix Cloud is app layering. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about a couple of other pieces in that space, and that how do I manage end user information and resources and images, machine images. Okay, so app layering is one piece of that. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, we're going to talk a little bit around workspace environment management. So both app layering and workspace environment management came from separate acquisitions that Citrix made over the last couple of years. And if you've done any kind of app delivery, or you've done any kind of server-hosted apps, if you've done VDI, you know that, and well, heck, even traditional physical devices, handling user profiles has always been a challenge. And one of the things that Workspace Environment Management brings to us is not only can we manage those profiles better, okay, we can actually get a lot of optimization out of it as well. Because a couple of things happen. For the WEM, we have an agent on the image that the user is connecting to. And that gives us a lot of visibility of what's going on. And so what we can do is we can look at, well, how long does it take to load that user profile? Can we optimize how it loads? Okay, so there's a lot of things that when a Windows profile loads, it does this and waits for that to be done to do the next thing. And then it waits for that to be done before it gets to the next thing. We have a lot of opportunities by managing that to rearrange things so we can get faster logins. And those login times can be dramatically faster in a lot of cases. Going from, in some cases, to, for poorly optimized environments that might take a minute or two to log down, to get that into a few seconds. Okay, so it's going to be very dramatic. We also do a lot to optimize the applications that are running and manage back-end resources. So when you start an application, it's going to say, hey, operating system, I need X amount of memory. And your operating system will happily say, okay, you got it, and reduce how much is available to other applications. Well, what WEM does, what that agent does, is it can actually look at, well, what is that app actually using? So the next time you start it and says, hey, I need 4 gigs of memory, it says, yeah, I know you're saying that, but here's the gig and a half, which is what you actually used the last time. All right, so we can do a lot to manage resources, and that can help us with server density, so the number of users we can support per server or per instance if we're looking at Azure hosted. And it gives us a lot better control over what we need to support users. We get a lot more intelligence, a lot more information about what's going on. So talking more about that workspace experience, in addition to that WEM agent we'd have for that application or desktop operating system, Workspace app is the ultimate replacement to receiver. So in fact, if you've updated receiver, you're now on Workspace app, but unless things have changed on the back end, your experience is going to basically be the same. Where things really change is when you move from that traditional on-premises style licensing to Citrix Cloud services, because that brings in a lot more information. Okay, so we're capturing a lot more information, we're providing a lot more detail, a lot more reporting, and a lot more auditing information. One of the biggest things about Workspace app is we've really gotten to the level of user continuity that we've always been striving for. So what that allows us to do is really provide that single experience for that end user regardless of device when they log in. Okay, all the way down to where if I've integrated with Citrix ShareFile, which is our file sync and share solution, what I'll see is my most recently used documents are my most recently used documents. Okay, so if I'm working on a document on my laptop, shut that down, go back in, open up my Workspace app on my tablet, I'm going to see that document I was just working on my PC. Okay, because it's all integrated, or my virtual desktop or whatever, because it's all integrated and all that information is shared between every Workspace app that I'm running as a user. Okay, and the other half of that is the backend services. We're going to talk more about this from an analytics standpoint, but what the information that Workspace app is providing about things like app performance, how the user is connecting, what the device is, where they're connecting. Okay, it's all being fed back up into Citrix Cloud, all right, and we're capturing that to provide better optimization. We're doing that to optimize that user profile management, that experience, environment management, and as using that to provide analytics to the back end, so we can provide the highest level of security, including security for things like single sign-on apps. So if we look at what's in the Workspace app, okay, so this would be running on your PC or your Chromebook or your tablet or your phone, okay, wherever you install the Workspace app, there's a couple of key pieces. So the first piece we're going to call out is HDX, and that's really kind of the core receiver functionality that would be connecting us to our apps and desktops. Content collaboration, okay, is the share file piece. So if I'm using share file for my file sync and share, I'm going to see the documents I have available as part of Workspace. Networking components, all right, so it needs to talk back to NetScaler for physical location, or NetScaler gateway, the Citrix gateway service as part of Citrix Cloud. All right, we need those components there for things like endpoint analytics to make sure to see, is this a secure device? Is it a public device? What network is it on? Analytics about the actual performance of those connections. What is the user seeing in login times, performance for applications, as well as the underlying management pieces. And really what that allows us to do is provide continual updates for that app, control over those updates if we don't want necessarily the latest version for compatibility reasons, or we have testing that we need to do before we push the latest update, as well as some policy control.
Andrew, got a question. Can Workspace app tell me if the user is on a bad Wi-Fi connection?
The answer is the backend analytics. You could actually get the information now in a traditional environment. It's a little bit easier to get to in a Citrix Cloud environment. But if we have that agent, so the Workspace app, on that client device, we're going to be able to see when they're connected what the quality of that connection is. Okay, because that's one of the things, because your user is going to call up and say, Citrix sucks. Okay, my app isn't working. And the answer is, well, yeah, you're sitting at Starbucks with 400 other people and you're on a crappy connection. Of course it's not. Okay, so absolutely, we can get that information, and we can do that, again, with traditional on-premise, as well as Citrix Cloud. It's just, it's more integrated when we look at it from the Citrix Cloud services, because guess what? It's not something I have to set up. It's part of the, for lack of a better way to put it, the base package. Okay, so it's not a specific licensing level of product that I need. So it's just a little bit easier to get through Citrix Cloud.
Great, thank you. Hey, and I'm sorry, I missed an earlier question. about Profile Manager. Does the new Environment Manager replace CPM?
The answer is it works with. Obviously, Roadmap brings all of those together, but at this point, there are a couple of discrete differences where you've got one is optimized for certain use cases versus the other. Okay, so until they can really get parity in a single product, both products will continue to be developed and supported. Okay, so really what it comes down to, classic Citrix, okay, and you can take that as a maybe I'm being a little sarcastic, is that you've got multiple tools to use, and so part of the challenge, which is why you leverage people like Cornerstone, is, well, what's the best tool for this use case? And it may be that, well, for this type of users, I'm better off doing these things through WEM. And for these users, for this use case, CPM provides the optimizations I'm looking for. So yes, it's still going to exist until that's all brought in under the environment management umbrella.
Thank you.
Okay. So the one thing I didn't talk about in Citrix App was the embedded browser. So the Workspace app comes with a browser. It is Chromium. Okay, so it's Chrome based. It is highly secured. I've actually heard the term armored used. Okay, and really the big thing about it is it provides us a way to simplify single sign-on to SaaS applications, as well as provide security around those applications. So that's what we're going to move into next, and this is really where we're trying to bring together the best of the both worlds. So normally, when we talk about user experience and productivity, it's versus control and security. So much so that we've traditionally had slides where we show this as a tug of war. Okay, and the answer is we actually have a way to bring it together now. And here's the challenge, okay? Whether you intend to or not, you're using software as a service. If you don't think you are, you need to look at your network traffic, because probably someone in your organization is, okay? Because it's just too easy. All you need is a credit card, okay? And if you're big enough to, have different departments, I can almost guarantee that it's happening. All right, and typically the way it works is, as long as it's not the monthly charge is below a threshold amount, it never even hits a red flag, because hey, it's below what I can expense, and so nobody ever even sees the receipt. Okay, so how do we bring this under control? And if you go back to those people using that software as a service, they can give you all of the justifications of why they need to use it, and honestly, if you objectively listen, you're gonna end up saying, yeah, you're right, that is the best tool for the job. But how do we get control over that? And this is, the needs are there. We look at, phishing attacks happen all the time. Okay, if you're not currently doing social engineering tests and penetration tests, and using something to see how often I'm going to pick on executives click on those really bad emails that look like they're from somebody good, specifically called whaling in some cases, okay, a little bit beyond phishing. We know that the challenges are there. And that's really what we're trying to solve with access control, which is part of the Citrix Cloud services that are available. Okay, so access control is really what it powers the best functionality out of Workspace app. All right, so we look at it first from end user experience, and that's always been the Citrix focus. Okay, Citrix builds for end user experience, and it goes back to that shadow IT mindset. If I give you the best experience, if I give you the best way to work, you're not going to look for something else, and I'm going to have better visibility on what you're doing. Okay, and so what do users want? They want simplicity. They want to, log in once and have access to everything. They want single sign-on. They want consistent access. So all I need to do is I need to know I load up Workspace app on whatever I want to connect with, and I go here and I'm connected. Okay, and they want the flexibility to use different devices. All right, because they're going to be on different devices why don't get some control over what they're doing? And really where the key is this is in Citrix Cloud, what we're doing is we're providing all that policy control. Okay, so one of the things that we can do is, yeah, we can provide single sign-on, but there's other people who can do that as well. If you're on Office 365, that's one of the things that you can do is you can provide single sign-on to SaaS apps. The thing that we can do that other people can't is we can wrap security and policy around those SaaS applications. All right, so you don't have to manage things out at Salesforce or whatever you're using. You can manage it through Citrix and provide that additional security. As part of the solution, since we're looking at where people are going, we roll in web filtering and classification. Okay, so whether we start with whitelist, blacklist, and then the other things that we can offer, again, that aren't generally available elsewhere or you need multiple products to get to, is that we can do isolated browser by using that browser in the Workspace app, as well as using our secure browser service. All right, so one of the things you get as part of access control is a disposable cloud-hosted browser. All right, so if you've got those kind of gray sites where they're not whitelisted or blacklisted, you can open them up remotely through a secure browser, which will go away as soon as you log out. And then finally, we get the visibility analytics that we need. So we find what users are doing. We look at how users behave. Okay, so what they're doing, what their typical behaviors are, and we use that to build a profile. Okay, because yes, there are a lot of tools out there to catch the actual threats. Okay, but the more important thing is to catch the behaviors. Okay, if you talk to people who do, physical security, okay, people who watch people, for lack of a better way to put it, they don't look for actions, they look for behaviors, because those behaviors are what tell them these are the people you need to watch. Okay, I've talked to a lot of people in those roles, and I guarantee you that, yeah, they will wait till somebody actually does something, but they've had that eye on that person because the cues are there, the behaviors were there that says, hey, this person is going to do something. All right, and then we get the real, the granular information about exactly what people are doing. All right, so this is where we get into some of the cool stuff. All right, so I go out to Citrix Cloud, I subscribe to something that gives me access control. So that's something I can get just by itself, or I can get that as part of the XenDesktop services, as well as some of the other products. So I get single sign-on, I get web filtering, and then I get this cloud app control stuff, which is a really cool piece, and how secure browser plays into that is really cool. Okay, this, like I said, powers Workspace app, and then also enables the analytics component on the back end. So we look at what happens typically with users. They have all their different devices that they work on. I'm sitting here and I've got three different PCs on. I got another one turned off. I've got my phone, and I've got a handful of tablets nearby. This is the way we work today. All right, so I'm going to log in from my phone, from my laptop, to all these different software as a service applications. I'm going to have to re-authenticate all the time. Maybe we've enabled multi-factor for Office 365. So every time I go to a device I haven't used for a while, I have to go and validate it again. Well, let's make it simpler. Okay, what we can do is we can bring all of that traffic through access control. Okay, so on my device, I install Workspace app. I don't need to, have access, have all the other apps. I don't have to authenticate to all the other apps. I can just do it through the Workspace app. And this is where it gets really neat. So here I am on my laptop or my tablet and say, okay, well, I want to go out to a SaaS application. Well, if I don't have the additional security features turned on, it is going to open up in that device local browser, okay? Let's say it's something I want to provide some additional control around. So if I turn on the enhanced security, it's going to open in the embedded browser, that armored browser that's part of the Workspace app. That gives me a couple of things. First, as you can see, I can now watermark. Okay, so I get some, from a control standpoint, even if somebody takes a screenshot, well, I know who it was, I know where they're coming in from. Then based on policy, if it's a blocked location, it's going to be denied. If it's a whitelist, they're going to go out still through that embedded browser, okay, but they're going to be allowed to connect. If it is one of these gray sites, I can redirect them to the secure browser service. So what happens is when they go to that URL, so maybe you say, well, I don't want to completely block Facebook, but I don't want to give people wide access to it. Well, maybe I'll put it through that secure browser service, which means I go out to a cloud-hosted browser, part of the Citrix Cloud service. They're going to need to log in every single time, okay, because no cookies, okay, no persistence. But then it's being accessed remotely. So, if they clicked on something bad, it really doesn't matter because it's going to be isolated at that secure browser, okay, which, like I said, when they log out, when they close that link, that browser gets thrown away, they reconnect, they're on a fresh browser.
Andrew, so licensing question. Does the embedded browser require a separate license?
The embedded browser functionality is powered by the access control stuff on the back end. Okay, so you would need to be on a Citrix Cloud subscription that provides access control. So that could be what we call Workspace Standard, which is basically just access control. And so you could layer that on top of your existing on-premise Citrix subscriptions. And then actually beyond that, it's up to you whether you want to do what we call site integration and have your locally hosted Citrix apps be visible through Workspace app or not. Okay, so that the access control service needs to be part of a subscription somewhere. And so that, like I said, that could be Workspace Standard. That could be Workspace Premium Plus, which includes the apps and desktop service. There's also a mid-tier that includes mobile device management. So again, yeah, to get that secure browser, to get that embedded browser functionality, you need the access control service on the back end because it's basically where we set our rules. All right, so yes, it does need to be a, quote, separate license. So you need it available either as Workspace Standard or move to a cloud service for your apps and desktops that includes it.
Great. And just timing-wise, you got about 7 minutes.
Yep.
Thanks.
I've only got 300 more slides. I should be fine.
Great.
All right, so we can get the same experience even if we don't have Workspace app. Okay, so maybe I don't want users connecting, using Workspace app from home, and I say, okay, just do everything from the web. Another great example is hotel kiosk. I spend too much time in hotels. And we can do the same kind of thing. So we might provide some URLs that they can just use the local browser to get to. But, better use case is, turn on that enhanced security. And what happens now is everything opens up in that secure browser. So either I have denied or allowed, I don't have a redirect because anything that if I turn on enhanced security, it's going through that secure browser service. All right, but I still get that same single sign-on functionality. So again, this is where it all comes together, okay, is that Workspace app is the one side of it, and then the back-end services. So there's the answer to your licensing piece. I need to have those back-end services enabled through some subscription. All right, analytics. Okay, this is where we really, add the secret sauce, okay? So yeah, cloud services are great. It offloads a lot of the management pieces, but the information we get out is more valuable, all right? So the analytics piece, there was a question about, network performance. It's there. If I'm on a cloud service, the data is available, okay? We've got the back-end analysis going on to where we can actually look at, hey, are we capturing the right things? Are we building these profiles correctly? And then we could provide automatic response, okay? That's going to build out as we add more functionality, same with from the analysis standpoint. But the way we really look at it is, capturing those data sources. So, both on the back end side, XenApp, XenDesktop, NetScaler, all of those components. What we see from a user standpoint, so anybody running Workspace app, we're capturing that information. And then what do we do about it? Okay, and so sometimes what we're doing is we're providing information back to those applications that says, hey, change this policy for this person, or lock them out entirely, or whatever we need to do. Okay, and we make this all very easy to work with. So I can just go out to my analytics dashboard and say, hey, I've got a couple of high-risk users, and then say, okay, well, what are they doing that's high risk? And I can dig down into the specific URLs that people are going out to. But the bigger thing is that I get to look at behaviors. Okay, so if Joe all of a sudden starts downloading, 10 times as many files as he used to, okay, that's unusual. Okay. If people are logging in at unusual times or from unusual locations, all right, we can capture all of that information, and then we can set policy and say, hey, is this something I automatically want to do something else about? Okay. And, like I said, if we see changes in activity, changes in behavior, that's really the critical thing that we're looking for with analytics. All right, because yeah, absolutely, we can say, hey, this happened, but we're much better off. It says, hey, it looks like something is different. You might want to look at it. So this whole idea of a user profile, okay? So if we have, as we capture data about people, we build their personal profile, but we kind of take a baseline from other users with the same set of applications. So think Active Directory group. So if we move, Bob from sales over to engineering, he's going to pick up that kind of engineering profile, all right, because we don't have information on him behaving in that environment yet. So he's going to kind of get an average of the users that are there, so we can see if his behavior is typical, okay, in that new role. So I talked a little bit about, download opportunity, looking at downloads, how we build all our rules, what happens with those conditions, what things do we flag as high priority, we want to do something about sooner, maybe we want to lock somebody's account just automatically, we want to alert somebody, whatever we need to do. And 3 minutes left.
Actually, you just answered one of the questions. Can I lock out a user who has unusual activity? So I guess that answer is yes, you can.
Yep.
That's super. Before we wrap up, I know Nicole would like those on the line to fill out the evaluation. That's helpful for ILTA and for Cornerstone and folks like us to improve our presentations. While you're filling that out, if there's any other questions, I think we hit on all of them that came in as they came in. And then also my contact information, jim.morio at Cornerstone.IT, or my phone number, 646-530-8920 is there. And then I'll give a last pitch for the Pittsburgh, DC, and Philly presentations. If you have any peers that you thought would be valuable to attend, Pittsburgh is on December 4th, DC December 6th, and Philly December 7th. And before I hand it back to Nicole, and also this presentation was recorded if you want to forward the link on. Nicole?
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. Obviously, thanks to everybody who shared with us today. Again, to Jim and the team. As he mentioned, we are recording it, so it'll be posted out on our site. It should be available by tomorrow, if not Monday, the latest, and everybody that's registered will get a link once it is posted on our site. And also, as he mentioned, before you leave, please fill out that evaluation. And again, thanks to Cornerstone IT for sponsoring today. So I don't see any other questions that might have come in. I know you guys were kind of addressing them as you receive them. And as Jim mentioned, his information is there if anything happens to come up after we wrap up. So it doesn't look like anything's coming in. So I think we can close out if everybody, or do you have any closing comments or anything you
No,
want to?
just a quick thanks to Jay and to Andrew, and also to Vidit and Sunny for standing by and listening, and to Adriana for working with the folks over at ILTA to put on these educational events. I thank you guys very much.
Always. Well, we appreciate everybody's attendance today. We look forward to having you on future events and hope you have a great day. Thank you.